This podcast is brought to you by Free Buddhist Audio, the Dharma for your life. Our work is funded entirely by donations from our generous listeners. If you would like to help us keep this free, make a contribution at freebuddhistaudio.com/donate. Thank you, and happy listening.
Okay, so my name's Amoghavajra, and Surya Vangsa, a few times in the past has said, why don't you pop to Danakosha? And he said it earlier in this year, because he said, you've got a Sangha retreat, why don't you come up? And I thought, yeah, and I was able to this year, so here I am at Danakosha on the Glasgow Buddhist Centre Sangha retreat. And not only that, he said more things to me. He said, well, we're going to have a theme, do you want to give a talk? And I said, well, okay, yeah, I'll give a talk. And then he said, okay, the theme is the Therigatha, and give a talk on one of the, sometimes they're called Songs of the Elders. So I said, right, okay. And I've read them before, and they're pretty full on. I don't know if you've been reading any of the extracts that have been around, but they're pretty full on. They're really full on. These are early Buddhists that gained enlightenment. So they're not just messing around, as it were. They're not just tinkering around. They have a kind of hardcore, yeah. They've really gone profoundly deep in their practice. So I said, okay, I'll give a talk. And then I thought, well, who will I give a talk on? So I was reading through these songs of the elders. And the one that struck me was on Maha-Kassapa. So I'm going to talk on Maha-Kassapa. And I think yesterday, Surya Vangsa gave a proper talk. What I'm going to give today is possibly a bit more like a story. And so I was really pleased that he was talking about fairy stories yesterday. He was. He did say, you can check in the transcript, the words did. He talked about stories, and even fairy story was mentioned at one point. So I'm not sure if I'm going to tell a fairy story, but I'm going to tell a story, and it will be the story of Maha-Kassapa, and we'll hear some of his verses at the end. As I'm talking, I was thinking, there's two types of truth. There is narrative truth and there's cognitive truth. Mostly in the West, we're very familiar with cognitive truth. Cognitive truth is what appeals to a rational mind. It's the truth of science. It's the truth of science. That's a good way of putting it. It's very cognitive, very rational. But there's also what's called narrative truth. A narrative truth is the truth of legend, of poetry. And if you've been out in the weather today, you might come back in and say, God, it was raining cats and dogs. And people will understand what you mean. It wasn't literally raining cats and dogs. Yeah. So there is this is a narrative truth. It's the poetic truth that conveys something, but it's not to be taken literally. So some of what I'll be talking about is probably actually happened. Some of it will be my maybe understanding of what may well have happened, and that will become apparent. So it's probably more in the realm of hagiography. So we think again in the West a lot about history, and we want to get facts and details. And this happened then, and that happened then, and then somebody did that, and they did it in that place, and I went to that place, and that does convey something. But again, more traditionally in Buddhism, you often get hagiographies, and they are based on some historical events, but they're also conveying the feeling or the experience of what it was like that went on. So this is what hagiography is, and it's not about hags. It's not the biography of hags. It's conveying something more poetic, a combination of poetic truth and literal truth. So this is what you get a lot in Buddhist texts. When you get a life of Padmasambhava, some of it probably actually happened, and something, and the rest of it happened, but it was as if it was like this. So it was as if this was what happened. So you all sitting comfortably? Good. So we're going to begin. We're going to time travel. Yes, I'm going to tell you a story. So all stories happen kind of slightly in a different space. So we're going to do some travelling. So do sit tightly. And put your seatbelts on. So we're going to travel. We're going to travel back. We're going to do two types of travel. We're going to travel in time, and we're going to travel in space. And I've got Doctor Who's got his TARDIS. Well, I can do one better, and I just use symbols. We're going to travel on the sound. We're going to travel on sound. So we're going to travel, maybe not quite at the speed of sound, but we're going to travel in sound. Yeah. So as the sound goes, the sound's going to be travelling. So we're going to travel with this sound. Yeah. And we're lifting off from Dhanakosha. You're all pretty safe. Don't wander off too far on your own. Yeah, stay with us. And where are we going? Well, we're going to go east. Yeah. So we're heading back in time and we're heading east. And we're still travelling. We're going back 10 years, 100 years, further. Going back 1,000 years. We're going back even further. Still possible. Might have to ring the bell again to get a bit further. Going further back. We're going back 2,500 years, and we've found the place that we're going to. And this is a very flat land. Yeah. And as you familiarise yourself with it, you'll find that, yeah, it's quite flat. In the very far distance, you can see a sea. There's lots of green around, there's lots of forest around. And in the distance, there's also some mountains. And these mountains have got snow on top, so they're very high. Yeah, they're very high. And sometimes you know that there's a cold wind can come down off of those mountains. You can feel it on your skin. But there's 3 seasons in this land. There is the cool season, there's a hot season, and there's a rainy or monsoon season. And this land is called Magadha. And this land is also called India. Yes, we know it as India. In the past, people knew it under different names, but we will call it Magadha. So we're back there 2,500 years ago. There is lots of people are living in villages. There is kings ruling over lands. There is lots happening. So something similar, if you went to village India today, you'd probably see something very similar. So we've travelled back 2,500 years ago, and we'll begin to hear the cry of a newborn baby. So he's just born, and even back in India they used to spank you in your bottom just to check you had a good pair of lungs, and he's beginning to cry. It's a boy, it's a young boy. And his father and mother are both present. Well, the mother's always present, but the father's present as well. Yeah. But the father's there as well. They're both very proud. They're both very happy. They've had a newborn son. Yeah, so the mother's exhausted, but very happy. And the father's kind of beside himself. He's got a son. Oh, fantastic. He's got an heir to his throne, because this is... no, maybe not quite a king, but he thinks he's a king. He owns 16 villages. So I don't know what size the villages are. Maybe you can imagine better than I can, but he's the owner of 16 villages. So, I don't know, that could be quite a big bit of land. And anyway, this particular man is very wealthy. Yeah. And he assumes, he feels like, well, maybe if it was Scotland, he might think he was the clan chief. But he's in India, so he's a Raja, he's a king. He feels himself to be a king. He's very happy that he's got a son. And his mother is very proud that she's got somebody that she can bring up, somebody that she can dote on and love and bring up. So they're both very happy. And, so things progress in this young boy's life. He... begins to grow older and his character begins to form. We begin to get to see that this young lad has a character. And his character is that, well, he's quite a happy child. Yeah, he's bright, he's happy, and he's very contented on his own. He's happy just doing stuff on his own. So his parents sometimes think, well, maybe I'll need to get in some playmates. We're not sure if he's got any brothers or sisters, but he's quite happy. He's happy on his own, he's quite bright. And he goes through his early years and he goes into his teenage years, and this character just begins to, this just seems something quite special about him. I'm sure you've all probably met somebody that you just think inside there's just something quite blessed about this particular person. And so this young boy, and he's got a name, his name is Kassapa. So he just seems inside very happy, very bright, very contented. And yeah, his father's the king of these 16 villages. His mother's very, very proud. And especially as you get into teenage years, those of you that are parents probably know the teenage years are a bit more difficult between parents and children. So it seems like there's a bit of tension. And it's a bit unusual tension in this particular family. Because here we have Kassapa, very bright, very happy. Happy to spend time on his own. Loves where he's living because he can quite easily get out into the jungle. He can get out into the wilderness and just really enjoy the beauty of the natural world around him. But there's a bit of tension. And the tension is that his father wants Kassapa to become like him. His father wants Kassapa to grow up and to take on the 16 villages. But Kassapa's not really that interested. Kassapa's much more interested in sort of leaving a worldly life. So there's a bit of tension in the household. So his father is, just trying to give him all the things that he thinks he would want. So he's dragging him down to the iShop saying, "Do you fancy an iPhone? Do you want the iPads are out now? The store's got iPads." And Kassapa's saying, "No, I don't really want one." His father's like, what do you want? And he says, "I'm just quite happy going off and wandering. Just leave me be. I'm just quite happy." And his mother, he's in his teenage years, and his mother has sort of been doting on him and seeing him going off up, playing on his own and being quite happy on his own and thinking, is there something wrong with my boy? He's not chasing after women, and he's not. So she's like, "Why don't you get yourself a girlfriend?" And he says, "Nah, I don't really want a girlfriend. I'm just quite happy as I am." So there's a wee bit of tension. Yeah, the parents can't really quite understand him. They're really into, his father's really happy that he's in charge of 16 villages, and he's proud that that's who he is. He's the Raja, he's the king of these 16 villages. He's got some status. He's got a place in the world because he's got this position. And his mother is very, she's a bit concerned because he doesn't really seem to be interested in girls. And so he's wondering, well, is he gay? And he's obviously not gay, but he's not interested in girls. So what's the thing? But he's just happy. He himself doesn't see it as a problem, but his parents are a bit worried. So they're saying to him, "Well, come on, I'll buy you an iPod. Do you want to have a big birthday party for your 18th birthday?" And he says, No, look, we'll just waste all that money. There's floods in Pakistan just over there. They're really short of water, they're really short of food. Send that money over there, buy them some water purifying, buy them some equipment so they can build wells and things like that. And his parents say, "Well, what, you don't want a party?" Yeah, but he's saying, "No, I'll go and do something more worthwhile with it. This party will be over and be a bit meaningless. We'll get together, we'll eat lots of food, and afterwards we're a bit bloated. But we could do a lot more with that money than just waste it in a party." So things like that are going on, and there's a bit of tension there. Yeah, so his parents are quite worldly in a way, very successful in what they're doing, and they've got this son who just doesn't really play the same game, and they're a bit concerned. So they're badgering him all throughout his teenage years. Take on, become the king, look after all the properties, learn how to do it. His father's very proud, and he's got all these villages that they're in charge of. And the mother keeps saying, "Well, you need to get married. You need to get married." And his dad says, "Son, your mother's right. She's always right. You need to just do what your mum says. Get married." It's a similar story all over the world. You've got to do what your mother tells you. But he thinks, if I get married, I'm going to end up caught up, a bit like my father is, spending all my time going from here to there, doing all these official duties, and I don't really want to do that. I want to go off. I want to learn to meditate. I want to leave the world. I want to find what's really valuable. But they keep on at him, so he finally decides that he's going to give in, but he's going to try and do it on his terms. He said, okay, well listen, I will get married, but only on one condition. And I'll tell you this condition tomorrow. So he goes away and he moulds a figure of a female. So all the curves, beautiful face, and dresses the figure up in all the silks, and he hands this beautiful image of a female to his mother and father, and he says, well listen, if you can find a woman who's as beautiful as this image, then yes, I'll marry her. So he hands over the image, and he's not quite sure if he's done the right thing, but he thinks they'll never be able to find anybody as beautiful as this. So his parents are, right, okay. So they get the men on the job. So, right, we've got a task for you. 8 top guys, come in. Okay, you've got to search the land for this beautiful woman. Our son will only marry this woman that looks like this. Or this is your task. And you don't have a choice. This is what you've got to do. Yeah, go and find this. Go and find this woman. And so it's a bit like the Cinderella. Somebody was talking about Cinderella the other day. Instead of having a slipper, they've kind of got the image. So they've got this image, and they think, oh, okay, this is you and me, but let's go and find this woman. So they go off and they're looking around the countryside, and lo and behold, they're told that there is a really beautiful woman in one of the villages. And they think, well, I wonder if this is the one. I wonder if this is the one. And they go and they find that she looks just like the figure that Kassapa has modelled. And they talk to the parents and they say, okay, we're the Brahmins that we work for the king of these 16 villages, and he's sent us on a mission, and he's looking for a beautiful daughter to marry his son who will become the king. And the parents that he's talked to, oh, that's funny, we've got a lovely daughter, but she's refusing to marry anybody. She says she just wants to leave and go and leave the worldly life. So he said, oh, brilliant. This is sorted here. So, a wee bit of arranged marriage goes on, and Kassapa and, Bhadda, this is the young princess's name, Bhadda, the beautiful princess. They are arranged to be married. And they're both not sure about this arranged marriage. They're thinking, well, I'd really like just to go off and leave a worldly life, rather than getting more into it. I want to leave it. So they think, oh, I better do the right thing and write to this person and tell him what I'm like. So they both have the same thought, and they write a letter. No texts in those days, so they write a letter and fold it up, give it to I don't even know if there was post. Was there post? We don't even know if there was post, but there was letters, and the letters are going, the rest are crossing over, and the parents are quite fly. They think, okay, they're not in. They want to leave the worldly life. We better make sure that nothing happens. So they're intercepting the mail. So they intercept the mail and they say, letter, don't want to do this. Change it round. Letter, do want to do this. So they switch the letters, and different letters go. So the marriage goes ahead. So these parents are quite crafty. They know a thing or two. So the marriage goes ahead, and as Bhadda and Kassapa meet and get to know each other, they both introduce themselves and say what they're like. But they do. They're as good. They do communicate, saying, "Well, listen. Okay, I'm doing this a bit under forced. What's the next thing that would go with that? I'm doing this under pressure. Yeah. And but really, what I want to do is I want to kind of leave this behind, and I would rather go off into the jungle." And they both begin to realise that they're both of the same heart. They say, "Oh, that's funny. That's what I want." And did you not get my letter? And I said, "No, but did you not get my letter?" "No." "Well, I wonder what happened there." So they're both beginning to understand that actually they're coming into this marriage, but they're not. They're really under their parents' pressure. So they do get married, but they make a vow that they're not going to consummate their marriage. And they wonder, well, how are we going to do this? Young man, young woman, bed together. When I gave this talk before, I said at this point, well, you know what it's like when push comes to shove. I couldn't think, you know, you've got a young man and a young woman in a bed together. Well, you know, what's going to follow? So what they decide is they decide that they are going to have a garland of flowers down the middle of the bed. So they put a garland up. Yeah, you may well shake your head. you put a garland of flowers down the middle of the bed, and that's there to remind them of what they really want to do with their lives. Because they kind of realise, well, okay, it might be quite nice a night of fun or a few nights of fun, but then if we want to be going off and leading the worldly life, we won't be able to do that if we've got children. You know, we want to bring our kids up. You know, we want to look after them. We want to provide for them for all those years. So we'd be putting off for many, many years what we really want to do. So we thought, well, we better not get to push comes to shove. So let's keep the flowers there, and it works. Yeah, it works. It's a story. This is what the story says. A garland. So if you're ever in a tight spot, a garland of flowers. It works every time. So the years begin to unfold. They're married young. Bhadda's 16, Kashapa's 20 when they get married. And they're living together. They're living there with Kashapa's parents, and he's looking after his 16 villages. Probably quite busy. You need to get on your 4x4 to get round them all. But the parents die, and Kashapa and Bhadda take on the responsibility. They take on they're quite responsible people. You know, they are very ethical and realise, well, we've got a responsibility to run the estate well for the people that are working here. So they take on the course of looking after the estate, the 16 villages, and they do it very well. They're very good at it. And so it happens that one sort of harvest time, Kashapa's out in the fields overseeing the reploughing of the fields ready for the next season. And as he's watching the plough and the ploughshare going through the ground, he's seeing the earth getting turned over. And as the earth's getting turned over, he's seeing the worms and all the different insects their beds are being disturbed. A bit like a certain famous Scots poet who saw the very same thing. And but he also sees that following the plough and the ploughshare are all the birds, and the birds are getting their meal from the insects that are disturbed by the plough. He's quite disturbed at this kind of carnage. He's got quite a sensitive heart, and he sees all the insects just being eaten by the birds that are following the plough. And he's quite disturbed at this, and he turns to someone and says, "This is awful. Whose karma is this? All this carnage, all these disturbed lives, all these lives that have been taken, been killed. Whose karma is this going to be?" And the man who's the ploughman is looking up and says, "Well, it's you. You're the boss. You're in charge of the 16 villages. You're in charge of the estate. This is your karma, I'm afraid." And Cash was really deeply disturbed by this. He thinks, "Oh, didn't quite realise that." Oh, so he's just quite. So it's a bit like a Samvega arises. Yeah. So he says, "Oh my goodness, I need to do something about this. This is awful. All this suffering. I can't really bear it. You know, I can't really bear it." Meanwhile, at home, at the same time, the sesame harvest has come in, and Bhadda is overseeing the sesame harvest, and as the seeds are laid out to dry in the hot sun, all the insects that are attracted by the smell and by some food, again they're being eaten by the other flock of birds that know that this is going to be happening. So she's witnessing carnage back at home, and she's also deeply disturbed and thinking, "My goodness, all this killing, all this suffering, whose karma is this going to be?" And she turns to her lady maid and says, "Well, all this suffering that's happening here, whose karma is this going? Who's going to bear this karma?" And the lady's maid turns as well. "Bhadda, you're the queen of all this estate. This is your karma." And it really hits home to her. "Oh my goodness, all this suffering. and I'm going to bear this. So again, that kind of samvega arises of this just is not. There's got to do something about this. Got to do something about this. So Kassapa returns, and they're talking when they both return back home, and they're sharing their day, and they both realise that they want to do something about this, and they want to go forth. This is now time to leave their worldly life. They've followed their parents' wishes and instructions, but really they can't bear it any longer. Their will to live a less worldly life is so strong that they've got to do something about it. So what they do is they send some servants down to the bazaar, and they ask them to come back with some yellow robes and 2 begging bowls. So they send down to the bazaar. So a bit odd, that, isn't it? Bring me 2 robes and 2 begging bowls. We're leaving. So that's what happens. The servants bring back the robes, and these are the robes of the wandering mendicants, the sadhus that were just wandering in India. That would signify that you're a sadhu, and they've got the begging bowls as well. So they decide that they're going to head off. The next day they head off, dressed in their wanderer's robes, with their begging bowls slung over their shoulder, and they shave each other's head, just as that last mark of kind of going forth. They shave each other's hair off, and that's them. They're on their way, and they set out, and they're leaving behind their estates, and the people that are working on the estate are very upset, because they're thinking, well, who's going to run the estate? And Kassapa says, well, I'm just leaving it in your hands. And those that were slaves he had set free. He says, well, now's the time. You're now free. You're now free people. But they're both determined that they're going to leave. So they leave, and they go forth on the wandering life. So this is the life of a sadhu, where you just don yellow robes and get you partake of the wealth of the country and the countryside just by begging, and the people support you to do that. So they are going forth, and as they're wandering about, they're kind of thinking about what they're doing in the life that they've chosen, and they kind of begin to realise that she's still a young, beautiful woman, he's a young man, and they're thinking, tongues are going to be wagging. Okay, so we've kind of gone forth from the household life, but people won't really believe us. We'll create a lot of this is going to create a lot of difficulty for ourselves if we say that we've kind of gone forth from the household life, but we're wandering around still as man and woman. I don't know if they were still using the garland of flowers, but they just realised that actually this is going to cause us a lot of difficulty, and it's going to create a lot of unnecessary, in a way, bad karma for those that are going to gossip about us. Because although we haven't, we are just still platonic, and people will not believe that, and so they'll gossip about us, and it'll be bad for us, and it'll be bad for them, because they'll be gossiping. So they sadly realise that they're going to have to part. And there's some suggestions in this story that for many lifetimes they have been involved together, and so this is a really difficult decision for them, because they're very deeply fond of each other, but they realise that they're going to have to go their different ways. It just won't work because of the culture that they're in. It just won't work. So Bhadda says to Kassapa, okay, I think we are going to have to split. We have to go separate ways, at least for the meantime. So when we come to the next fork in the road, please, you take the right hand fork and I'll take the left hand fork. And when we split, it'll be very sad, but that'll be us for the meantime. We'll have to do that. So they come to the next fork in the road, and sadly, Bhadda goes down the left hand road, or the left hand path. And that's another story, and that's another story for another time. Our story is going to follow Kassapa down the right hand road. So Kassapa follows the right hand I don't think there's any significance in that. Sometimes in the Tantra you get this left-hand Tantra, but this is pre all of that. Yeah. So, who else is on the scene apart from Kassapa and Bhadda? Well, the Buddha. The Buddha is around. He has been at Nalanda and he's in that vicinity. And when Bhadda and Kassapa go their separate ways, it's such a spiritually momentous and important time that the earth trembles. It's not an earthquake. It's the ground is shaking because of the momentousness of the act that they're doing. And again, quite many times in the Buddhist tradition. So like when the Buddha gained enlightenment, it's said that the earth trembled in many different types of ways. And that was just to signify the momentousness of that occasion. So when Bhadda and Kassapa separate, it's a very spiritually momentous occasion, very deeply profound, and the earth trembles. And the Buddha's down that right-hand fork, funnily enough, and he senses the earth trembling, and he knows that why this is trembling, and he realises that something deeply spiritually important has been happening. So he decides that he's going to set off in that direction. So the Buddha sets off down this road from the other direction from where Kassapa's going. And the Buddha gets so far and he decides it's time for a rest and finds a fig tree, we're told, and as was his wont on many occasions, he sits under a fig tree and he's sitting there waiting, and because he knows that somebody's going to come along this road. And then Kassapa appears, new robes, new begging bowl, striding out, and Kassapa sees the Buddha, and Kassapa realises, he sees the sort of spiritual brilliance of the Buddha, and the Buddha just sitting there, as you do, sort of under your fig tree, and waiting for your disciple to arrive. And Kassapa senses that this is somebody that's really special. So Kassapa approaches the Buddha, and as he approaches, just begins to realise there's something more and more special about this person the closer he gets to him. It's probably not long after the Buddha's enlightenment, so there's really still something quite major in the Buddha's demeanour and in his aura. If you could see his aura, it would have been an enlightened aura. So there's just a lovely presence about the Buddha, and Kassapa approaches the Buddha and proclaims that from now on, I'm taking you as my teacher. The Buddha doesn't get to say yea or nay. No, he doesn't have a year to make his mind up. He has to respond very quickly, and he probably sees that actually this is some cool geezer. This is somebody who is actually really going for it. Yeah. So he responds to Kassapa. He says, "Yes, fine. I will take you on as one of my disciples. I will be your master, but I'm going to give you a teaching. Yeah, I'm going to give you a teaching. I don't know if this is what happened between Gunasiddhi and Dhanabhadri, but this is what happened between the Buddha and Kassapa. So the Buddha sees Kassapa, and Buddha was very astute, I think, with his perception of people, and he sees Kassapa and he thinks, well, what will be of benefit? What can I say that will be of benefit to Kassapa? So what he says is that, yes, Kassapa, you can become my disciple, do become part of my Sangha. But I'm going to give you 3 teachings. And he says, the first teaching that I'll give you is that always maintain a keen sense of shame and of wrongdoing towards all others in the Sangha. So the Buddha probably says something about Kassapa's demeanour, and says that this is somebody who is of quite an upper class background, but don't allow that to get in the way of your relationships with others in the Sangha. Don't bring a haughty manner into your dealings with others in the Sangha. So be aware of acting appropriately towards all others in the Sangha. The second teaching that he gives them, he says, the second teaching that I'm going to say to you is, well, any Dharma that you hear or listen to it with an open mind. And if you find it to be worthwhile, then just let it absorb into your heart. Be as wholehearted as you can about receiving this teaching. And Kassapa probably thinks, yeah, that's not a problem. I'm very happy to do both of those things. And then the Buddha says, and there's a third thing I'm going to say to you. There's a third teaching. And this third teaching is, he says, well, as you're practising, you'll be practising mindfulness of your body. But as you're practising mindfulness of your body, don't neglect the gladness of your heart that's linked with that practice. So yeah, be mindful, get really into your meditation practice, but don't neglect gladness. Yeah. So all that's fine. Kassapa is very happy to take on these teachings. The Buddha is very happy to take Kassapa as his disciple. And so they carry on their journey. And they're walking along. They're walking back towards, actually it's back towards Rajagriha. Rajagriha's it's termed a mountain. But I don't know, I'm told that, well, in Indian terms it's a mountain, but it's not that high. It's about 500 feet. Yeah, so it's not really, but it's a mountain for them. So, but they're heading back to the Mount of Rajagriha. And they stop to have a rest. And Kassapa is very respectful towards his new teacher. So he takes off his robes and he folds it up, takes off his new robes and puts them down on the ground so that the Buddha can sit on them. So the Buddha can have a seat. And the Buddha sits down and says, oh, that's very comfy, that's really nice, thank you very much. It's just quite pleasant. Very nice of him to do that. And Kassapa senses, God, my robes are really soft. But the Buddha has just got these old rags sewn together. So he thinks, Buddha, why don't we swap? Why don't you have my robes, my nice new soft robes, and I'll take on your robes, your rags that you've put together. And the Buddha says, are you sure? Are you sure you can wear these hempen, worn out rag robes of mine? And Kassapa says, yeah, I can actually, I want to. So it's quite significant that this last almost vestige of his position, Kassapa gives away, and he takes on the old rag robes of the Buddha and is very happy to wear them. And the Buddha just takes Kassapa's robes. Yeah, that's fine for him. So this is the story of Kassapa and the Buddha meeting. And it's said that Kassapa within 7 days gained enlightenment. So he was a fast mover, and he did remarkably well. So he gained enlightenment in 7 days. And as his life unfolded, Kassapa carried on with with his intention to lead a very simple life. And he became very well known, very renowned for his meditation, and very renowned for his austerities actually. Yeah, he was very keen to practice a simple life so that he didn't get caught up unnecessarily in anything else. And Buddhists are allowed 13 Dhutanga practices. This is a list of them if anybody wants to practice them for the rest of the week. And Kassapa became very well renowned for them. Yeah. It's said that he became foremost among the bhikkus and bhikkhunis in regard to observing austerities. And when he was asked why he practiced these austerities, he said, well, I practice them because they're for my own well-being. Yeah. They bring me joy. And he also said, well, I also practice them to show that it can be done, and that I can be an example for future generations, that it is possible to lead a simple life. And not just a simple life, but a simple life that's full of gladness and joy. So also he was as good as his word, and he did remember the Buddha's teaching about remembering to foster and cultivate gladness in his heart while he was practicing his austerities and doing his meditation. So although he led a very simple life, his inner life was incredibly rich. His inner life was very joyful and very glad. So we're talking something about his life and qualities. So he's foremost among the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis in observing the simple life and the austerities. The next quality about Kassapa is that it's said that he wouldn't do anything unbefitting a monk for the sake of robes, for alms food, for medicine, for anything at all, for house, somewhere to stay. He wouldn't really compromise his ethics. So he'd always take what came his way. So when the bhikkhus were wandering around, they'd have their bowl, and that's where they collected their food. And so you can imagine, or can you? I don't know if I can imagine just getting your food from having a bowl and wandering up and standing outside somebody's front door. And whatever comes your way, and that's what you eat. So you can imagine getting quite anxious about, well, am I going to get the curry that I like? Any veggie burgers today? You just eat what comes your way. And if it's just a poor village, then you might just get rice. And if it's a poor village in hard times, you might not get anything. And this is what happened to those bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. They wouldn't always eat. But it said that Kassapa would always just take this in good grace, and he wouldn't get upset. And if he didn't get a lot to eat, and if he didn't get what he liked, then he would just take and eat what he got. And he wouldn't say anything to the, you can imagine you're hungry, you get your bowl and you get a little bit of dal and a little bit of curry, you think, is that all you're going to give me? But because you're hungry. But he said that it never crossed his mind, it never even crossed his lips, any bad word, any frustrated or anxious or angry word. The third thing about Kassapa that we're told is that he was exemplary in his meditation practice. So in Buddhist practice we often are talked about 8 dhyanas. There's 4 dhyanas of form, and there's 4 formless dhyanas. And they're very profound meditation states. And it's said that Maha-Kassapa, as it went on, he became known as Maha-Kassapa. It's said that Maha-Kassapa was only second to the Buddha in his ability to go deeply in meditation. And through his practice of meditation, it's said that he developed 6 supernormal knowledges. So Suryavansa mentioned 3 of these yesterday. So if you meditate deeply, you can get 6 supernormal knowledges. So I'll tell you about them because it might inspire you to go and sit there in your meditation. The first one is that you get magical powers. Yeah, whoa, what about that then? Yeah, you get magical powers and you get the ability to walk through walls. How cool is that? Yeah. You can walk on water. You can sit there and manifest another image of yourself. So there can be 2 or 3 of you around. And who's to know that some of us aren't already doing that? Yeah. So some of us might be on retreat and down in Glasgow having a high life. So you can manifest different. That's one of the cities. That's one of the magical powers. That's one of the first abhinyas they're called, or abhinyas, 6 supernormal knowledges. But that's quite mundane actually. Yeah, you don't really want to just stop there. You might be able to impress your friends at a party, but there's further that you can go. The second one is clairaudience. So you can hear things at a distance. The third one is that you can tell people's mind. So you can tell what state of mind somebody's in. And this used to really freak me out. When I first came along to the Buddhist movement, I thought, oh my God, they're going to know what's in my mind, Because I'd heard about this ability of people to read minds. And oh no. And then it's a great relief to find out that they couldn't. Then it was a great trauma to begin to find that I had to tell people what was on my mind. So, yeah. So that's the third abhinya, is that you know what's on people's mind. If it's a mind of greed or hatred or delusion, you can tell. Yeah. But when we get onto the 4th super knowledge, that's when it begins to get a wee bit more interesting, believe it or not. And that, as Suryavansa said yesterday, you begin to recollect former lives. So we're moving now from just sort of pretty mundane abilities, pretty cool abilities, but still quite mundane, into something that is beginning to be of the nature of insight. So you're beginning to see that in a former life you were so and so, and you lived so and so, and you did this, and you just see back and back that you've had there's been a whole stream of lives. So who you are is just beginning to be thrown into a much, much bigger context. And the fifth knowledge is what they call divine eye, and that means that you can see where you're going, what lies in your future. And the Deva eye is said to be able to see where you're going in the future, and you also understand that independence of what you do now, that's what gives rise to your future. So what you're doing in your present is creating your future. So that's the Deva eye. So those two are linked around conditioned co-production. So it's a bit like you're beginning to really see that everything is arising and depends upon conditions. And the sixth supernormal knowledge is the knowledge of the destruction of the ashrivas. So Suryavansa again said a little bit about that yesterday. But that's the kind of realisation that capacity to act in any way unskillfully has completely just been rooted out. It's just gone. It's dissolved, as it were, in your consciousness. So those ashrivas are no longer operate in your stream of consciousness, in your mind. So this is the third major quality about Maha-Kassapa. He's renowned for his meditation experience and for his development of those supernormal knowledges. And one of the little stories that I like about Maha-Kassapa is that on one occasion he was going through a village, and there was a poor female villager, and she saw this sadhu coming through her village, and she just was able to see that there was something about this particular person that was very special. And I think we get that from time to time, that we think, oh, there's something really special, this person's got something. So this female villager was experiencing seeing a sadhu, and just thought, oh God, there's something about this person. And so she knew that he would be on his arms round, so she wanted to offer him, she wanted to support and be in whatever way she could part of what he was involved in. So she offered him she just had parched rice, we're told, so she offers him a little bit of parched rice, but she also makes the wish that whatever good this sadhu, this bhikku is involved in, could she also partake in. And the only way she's got, in a way, is giving some rice, but she gives some rice, and her giving is her way of getting involved, of being involved, of supporting this thing that she thinks of as quite special. And she gives that to Maha-Kassapa. Maha-Kassapa receives it. And as she's walking away, we're told that she comes across a poisonous snake who bites her and kills her. So she dies from the snake bite. But she's reborn as a deva, as a devi, as a goddess, because of the skillfulness of that action, just as she was on the point of death. And she remembers how she had this very fortuitous birth. So then she's able with her Deva eye to see Maha-Kassapa sitting there meditating in his little hut, his little kuti. And she thinks, oh, there's that sadhu. So she comes down, and for 3 days she cleans his hut, and for 3 days replaces the water in his hut. And Maha-Kassapa must be thinking, I thought I'd finished that water. And then it's miraculously refilled. But this is what the story relates, that this Devi spent 3 days clearing out his hut and replacing the drinking water and the washing water. But Maha-Kassapa originally he twigs, there's a Devi doing this. I don't know how he does it, but he does. And he asks her to leave because it wouldn't be appropriate for him as a renunciant that's gone forth, to have a Devi, a goddess, cleaning out his hut. So it's just not appropriate. you imagine what the Sunday newspapers would say about it? So again, that's a lovely little story. And he has another encounter, not just this time with one goddess, but 500 goddesses see him, and they're so impressed by his spiritual life and what he's doing is that they want to come and offer him alms food. But as they approach, he sees them coming. He says, "No, it's not appropriate for you to. It's not appropriate for me to receive my food from the gods, the goddesses. So I can't accept this." So he says he can't do it. It's not appropriate. So they go off, and they're really disappointed. And they are really. There's different layers of gods and goddesses in the Indian mythology, and they're in the realm of Shaka, who's the chief of the gods. So he gets to hear what's going on, and he thinks, "Wow, there's this guy sort of meditating." So Shaka, the chief of the gods, decides that he wants to go and give Maha-Kassapa his food. He wants to give to him. So he disguises himself because he knows that Maha-Kassapa won't accept food from a god. So he disguises himself and gives Maha-Kassapa the food. And Maha-Kassapa doesn't notice until he gets the rice. And the fragrance of the rice is just quite exceptional. He thinks, this is fragrant rice. And then he realises, something I've been played a trick upon here. And he tells off Shaka, the king of the gods, for inappropriately giving him alms food. So we're getting a picture. I mean, we can kind of laugh at it, but this is somebody who was quite serious about their practice and lived a very simple life, and in a way wanted to, show that, you could lead a very simple life, and not only would it be a simple life, but it'd be a really happy, it'd be a joyful life. Maha-Kassapa was one of the main disciples of the Buddha, and there's possibly about 5 major disciples. In the telling that I heard, you have Maha-Kassapa and Sariputra, and they die before the Buddha, but the Buddha dies before Maha-Kassapa. And we're told that Maha-Kassapa he's on an alms tour with some of his disciples, and he's having an afternoon break underneath a fig tree, and he sees another sadhu walking past, and this sadhu is holding a mandarava flower. So what's unusual about that? Fascinating. It's massive.
Enormous, yes.
It's a massive flower, and it's a flower that only grows where?
Can I phone a friend?
Phone a friend. Hello, where do mandaravas grow? They grow in the Devalokas. So they only appear in the Devalokas. They're a sort of magical flower, and they're said to be, half a league across or something. Massive flower. So I don't know how maybe he's got over walking along with this mandarava flower. But Maha-Kassapa realises that something quite special has happened. So he turns to this sadhu and he says, "Where did you get that flower? And the sadhu says, "Well, I was over Kusinara. That's where the Buddha died." He says, I was over at Kusinara, and they're building a pyre for the Buddha, and that's where I picked it up." And so Kassapa gets this sad news that the Buddha, his teacher, his beloved teacher, has died while he's separate from him. So he's really concerned that he's not going to be able to pay his last respects to his teacher. He's not in sorrow because he knows that everything's impermanent. Some of the people that he's with are really grief-stricken, but we're told that Kassapa wasn't grief-stricken. But they makes their way back to Kusinara. And there's been a bit of trouble at Kusinara. And the trouble is that, they've built this pyre to cremate the Buddha, but they can't light it. It won't light. Get the matches out. It's not lighting. And this is after a week. So a week later, Kassapa comes with his band of disciples, and they're very glad to be able to have got to say their goodbye and their last respects to the Buddha, and they circumambulate clockwise round the pyre of the Buddha, and they do that once, and then they go around again, and once they've all circumambulated that pyre twice, the pyre just spontaneously combusts. And that's the story as I've heard it, without adding anything into it or taking anything away. That's what I've been told. So that's what we're told happened. So that was Kasshapa's farewell to the Buddha. We're not sure how Kassapa died. We're not told about how he died. But we know that he did outlive the Buddha, and that he was a very highly respected disciple of the Buddha. So, where does that leave us? So, it still leaves us 2,500 years ago in India. We've got to come back. Yeah. So we've got to come back to the present. So coming back on, is everybody with us? We haven't lost anybody. So we're back in Dhanakosha. It's 2010. It's 20 to 12. So here we have the story of Maha-Kassapa, yeah. And I don't see anybody rushing off to Balwhidder to get their yellow robes and bow. In a way, but what can we make of this? What can we make of this life story? It is of a different time, but it's trying to get something across. There's something I think that we can learn from this story. I think often we can think of taking up a spiritual life, and sometimes it can feel like, it means letting go or stopping doing stuff. And sometimes there are things that we want to move on from and let go of. But there's also things that we want to pick up and make sure that we're practising. So a bit like Maha-Kassapa, yeah, he was leaving his worldly life, but his instruction from the Buddha was, don't forget to have a glad heart. Yeah. So this, I think, is really important. So some of the things that make us happier are somehow from the senses. So what can we do if we're living a more simple life? Then how do we maintain a glad heart? I mean, some of the things that are suggested in Sri Ratna are practices like puja, faith and devotion, meditation, study, puja, ethics, but also being around in nature. Being in nature. So we're very fortunate that we've got Dhanakosha because it's so beautiful around here. There's so much nature. You step outside and there it is. Yeah, elements and the natural world in all its glory and beauty is really around us at Dhanakosha. But also friendship is something that's encouraged to keep our hearts alive and nourished, so that our hearts don't shrivel. So we might sometimes think, I've got to let go of this and do that and do this. But we've got to watch that our hearts remain glad. Yeah. And I think especially, I suppose, in Scotland we've got this, we've got this Protestant tradition, that part of that seems to be about letting go of things, live a simple life, but maybe it hasn't given a lot of attention to that sense of, if you live a simple life, also make sure you're living a glad life. So your heart is really thriving and flourishing. So now, just to finish with, my beautiful assistant. So Buddhism talks about practising a middle way, and that's a middle way between pleasure and asceticism. And one of the most maybe important insights of the Buddha was that you cannot afford just to deny yourself any pleasure, but the pleasures that you give yourself, what kind of come down afterwards do they have? Do they lead you on, or are they supportive, of your spiritual life. Yeah. So I think we cannot, we at our peril do we neglect joy and pleasure. So where do we get that in our spiritual life? How do we get that? How do we follow a middle way between pleasure and asceticism? So how do you find your middle way? So are you more in this realm? Are you more hedonist? Or are you more an ascetic? Or do you more happily think, well, if I deny myself that chocolate biscuit today, I mean tomorrow I'll get some good karma coming. So where are you? Where do you kind of place yourself in this? Are you more an ascetic or are you more a hedonist? And then if you are, well, how do you make your way more towards what's a middle way? And how do you gladden your heart? Surya Vaisya, when I said, when he was writing these up, and I said, and the second thing is, how do you gladden your heart? And the language might be a bit flowery, but I've been in England for 15 years, so you have to forgive me. Yeah. So how do you gladden your heart? Yeah, I think it's a very important question, because we have to take that on. Yeah. So I'll leave you with those two questions that maybe we can take into groups if we haven't finished with our questions from yesterday. So there you go.
Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. Please help us keep this free. Make a contribution at freebuddhistaudio.com/donate. And thank you.